Friends, welcome back to another thrilling adventure. I don't know, I just work here. Excuse me, that was me burping. We're doing this particular lecture as Science with Shots. And I totally recorded this episode previously, and it was super boring because I don't know, whatever I drank just wasn't doing the trick. But today we're drinking an old fashioned. I have no idea. I can't read without my contacts, but it says Chubline, 35% alcohol. I like old fashions, original cocktails by that Chubline, Hublein. I don't speak whatever language that's in. I have no idea. Let's see. Expertly crafted cocktails. Says 1852. Alright, whatever. It ain't bad. I typically like On the Rocks, but my spousal unit found this particular brand and it has the number 1792 on the label, and I have no idea what the hell that means because too under the influence of the things, mostly cannabinoids, but tonight a lot of the ethanol is CH3, CH2OH, C being carbon, hydrogen being H, and O, oxygen. If you didn't know, there are a variety of alcohols. You actually do know, you just don't think about it. Rubbing alcohol versus the booze and alcohol that you drink. Two totally different things. You cannot drink the rubbing alcohol / isopropyl alcohol / 2-propanol because science is the triumph of terminology over common sense. But you can't drink that one, but you can drink the one that's in the booze. You know, beer, whiskey, gin. I love tequila. Okay, if I had to pick, tequila is my absolute favorite, but my mother and father are both from Kansas, Arkansas, Texas, that general vicinity, and Georgia. So my family's in the southeast / central south of the United States of the Americas, which is ugh. Okay, I've been drinking, so I don't even know what it was, but it's a thing. It's a thing. Where you at? In this general vicinity of the map, and also it's a teeny bit Alaska. Anyways, lost the train of thought because the drinking, and hopefully this is funnier. Funny? I don't know. I'm not wearing the shirt because it's in the dryer, but it says literally, I just work here. And I feel like that applies everywhere, but so if anybody's wondering where the joke comes from, I am a massive, indie nerd film / shows, webisodes. So, my two favorites and my number one favorite, no matter what they do, always will be because Scott C. Brown was the minister who performed my marriage, wedding, whatever the freak it is, to my mister, will always be Dead Gentleman Productions and Zombie Orifice Entertainment, ZOE. They are brilliant. I hope Matt Vancel is doing amazing. I wish he was still with DG, but 100% get why he did what he did, and hope he's doing fantastic. So, Dead Gentleman number 1. My number 2 is Rooster Teeth, and they are from Texas, which is unfortunate in my eyes, but I'm sure they love Texas. But I Just Work Here is from an episode of a show called Red vs. Blue, which is made by Rooster Teeth. That's why I said all that I said previously. And I'm making all these hand gestures as though you can see me. And maybe, potentially, if you tell me that would be interesting to you, I will figure out how to do the presentations with a little picture of me in one of the corners, making all of the hand gestures and, whatever the freak faces I am making. Because I like being funny. I don't really give two words that will get me in trouble if I say them too much about what all y'all think about my appearance. Like, I am a fat little turd. I know. And there are a variety of reasons. If you would like to get into that conversation, do it in the comments. And I'd be happy to talk to you about the things that are going on in my life and how I would change them, because I would love to be in a position where I ate salads for every meal, everything was lean and healthy, but like the whole political socioeconomic situation, that's the one, is garbage and complicated as things are. Anyways, so speaking of complicated, there's a good segue. We're going to go ahead and talk plate tectonics. But, like, if you want to discuss things in the comments, don't be a jackaloon. Right? Like, be considered. Do with the thinking before you do with the posting. Maybe have a read aloud thing. Read your comment to yourself before you post it, because sometimes that can be really a good filter. But like, I will try to respond. I say as not sober me, but like, screw it. I will try to respond to any comments made on this video as quickly as I can. I hope that didn't carry. I popped some knuckles. It's kind of, yeah. I shouldn't, but I do. Okay, so plate tectonics, comment, don't be a jackaloon. I keep doing that, don't I? It's great. I'm really good at filtering myself when I'm drunk. It's kind of funny. I will not do with the swearing unless I intend to. I'm very honest this way. Okay, let's do this with the plate tectonics because it's freaking awesome. So, here's the deal. You have a planet, and I'm gonna make this. Okay, so here is the Earth. Round. Wow, you're saying that is a sweet Earth. Anyways, 5 points, possibly some free swag to anybody who can tell me where that came from. So the planet is, as anybody with more than 2 living brain cells knows, a sphere, kinda. But, we'll go with sphere because functionally, for this level of conversation, it is. But if you want to look at it under a, scanning electron microscope, you'll see that there is some variation. It's the same as our skin, right? You look at our skin, it looks really smooth and flat, but if you get it in, microscope, it's this sort of disaster area over here, right? So we're going to ignore this nonsense and just worry about the bigger picture. And really the more important picture, because, so here's the thing they may or may not tell you. In whatever class you're taking, excuse me, I'm going to do with the drinking. Again, whiskey. Oh, right. Like I was saying, my whole family is actually from the southeast. Bourbon is huge in that neck of the woods. And I actually really love a good bourbon. Almost as much as I love a good 100% agave tequila. And there is a distillery in Chelan, Washington that makes possibly the best tequila I have ever made ever tasted in my life. And if you ever get a chance or find it, Chelan, Chelan. They have a lovely little silver and no, it's not añejo. That's gold. Silver, I think, is the term they use. Argent in French, but I don't speak Spanish particularly well, and my French is only passable. Anyways, so like bourbon is huge in that neck of the woods. The tequila from Chelan is fantastic. Anything that comes out of the Chelan brewery is amazing, or distillery is amazing. I have yet to dislike. Anyway, so back to the drinking. Nice and smoky. I've lost my... Oh, crap. Where's the pen? That is rude. I have no idea where I put the stylus. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. Okay, so back on track. Hope that was mildly entertaining. I think, incidentally, my friends, that I am extremely funny. It's not necessarily true to most people, but I try. So let's do with the thing in the writing of the science. Plate tectonics. And like, if you are in a geology 101 level class, or like an intro geology, whatever it's called, I promise that no matter how intoxicated I get, I will give you true information that will be applicable in your class, because I want this to be educational. I think that education is the most brilliant thing we've ever come up with. I hate that it is monetized in any way, shape, or form. And I think that anybody involved in monetizing it should eat a gigantic bag of... I won't say it, because I don't want to have to bleep it later. Anyways, let's do with the educating. So, the planet is, and I think you will notice this just like without even thinking about it, God knows I'm not thinking. Not all parts of the planet's surface are the same. We have oceans and we have continents, and those are terms I hope that you've been exposed to before. But if you haven't, the oceans are the oceans. They are a massive body of typically salty water. Okay, always salty water. They're all eventually connected. They encircle the globe, and they make up 70% of the surface of our planet. The other 30% are continents. And the continents are the parts we're the most familiar with. That's where we exist, because we don't breathe water, which is a shame. I wish we did. That would be awesome. I love swimming. I'm such a fish. Ooh, excuse me. Okay, there we go. Heartburn mixed with booze burps. Good times. Delightful. I won't talk about what I ate last, although it occurs to me to do so. But anyways, so this is going to be a long one, friends. I hope that it is funny enough that you continue watching, but also educational enough that it helps you pass your exam on plate tectonics, because again, I know what I'm talking about. I am ABD on a PhD. I am this close, and I like my fingers don't touch by the finest margin, because you can't see me, to a doctorate. And quite honestly, the only difference between me and a person who has a PhD is 2 12-page papers. Not even kidding. And I'll get there, especially if I get support here. If I don't, I'll continue doing this. I don't care. I've realized in the last 10 years, mostly 5, because that's roughly the roundable time frame in which I've come to this conclusion that I don't remember. Okay, let's do plate tectonics, my lovelies. So, The planet is like a peach. And if you have not watched the early 2000s movie, The Core, watch it. It is the best B-rated geology movie on this entire planet of Earth. It is one of my favorites. I watch it all the time. When I was teaching at the university and had complete control over the class, I showed it every semester. I love The Core. Watch it. It's hilarious. So, there is a peach. All right? So, here is our peach. Let's see if it'll, there it is. There's our peach, right? And in the middle of a peach, as most of us are aware, there is a core. We're going to call it the core. That bad boy right there. And it's at the middle. And the core, I'm doing this out of order from this nonsense. There we go. Dots. The core is the densest. And what is density? So density is often written with a Greek letter, which I want to say is phi, but probably isn't. So we'll just call it density is equal to the mass over volume. Yeah, I can't do with the writing, and this thing's doing that. Okay, hush you. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Here is our E. Thank you. It's close enough, right? So, what that means is, and you know this without knowing this, and that is, so I had a professor in undergraduate named John Buchanan. He was my sedimentology and stratigraphy instructor. He taught a couple of other classes, and I actually really enjoyed the classes with him when he wasn't being a jackaloon. There it is. But anyways, he had a saying that really stuck with me, and it's very true. And it's not just geology, it's all of science, but I'm going to apply it to geology. Geology is the triumph of... I had a brain fault. I can't remember what it's called now. Okay, that's stupid. I will come back to it. Anyways, what we call it versus what it really is, terminology over common sense. That's the one. Geology is the triumph of terminology over common sense. And I think that applies to all sciences, really, because they all sound so freaking esoteric. But at the end of the day, they don't really mean much more than what we understand. It's just they sound fancy. So, density, right, as a concept, mass over volume. What does that even mean? Well, what that means is, how heavy is it? How heavy does it feel? So if you pick up something like lead, right? Like a lead weight for your fishing trip. I used to fish all the time with my dad, even with the jerk face, my ex. Nothing is better than a fresh trout in butter with salt and pepper. Nothing in the world, right? I have yet to find, please, I'd be happy to experience something better, but like fresh caught that day mountain trout in butter and salt and pepper is heaven. So, gonna turn myself around. Wait. I'm gonna come back to weight. Anyways, so if you're fishing and you have a fishing lure, it feels really heavy for the size of the thing, right? But let's say you pick up a feather, right? Especially a down feather, because there are reasons. compared to its size, it weighs almost nothing, right? So there are things we have experienced packing peanuts, right? They're a foamy, light thing, and they weigh very little compared to their size. Oh, this is a good one. When I was in my junior year, I went out on a field excursion, and one of the rules was, because the state we're in is a little on the restrictive side, and we were at a university because funding, we couldn't bring alcohol in the university vehicles, but we're geologists and we are incapable of surviving without certain amounts of the booze, according to the encyclopedia, which you should totes my goats listen to. Anyways, I want to get on to the next page, but like, can't with the brains, having the dumbs, drinking the thing. So, weight, you have a foam cooler. Picture that foam cooler, and like at my local IGA, before they got bought out by Rosars because they'd been around forever. Anyways, they would have them above the freezer section, just like sitting up there. But you can picture them, right? White polystyrene foam, or whatever. They weigh nothing. And then you have a fishing weight that weighs a crap ton compared to its size. That's density. The fishing weight has a higher density than the foam cooler. I'm definitely going to have to show you guys the facing. So, the thing with the most density is effectively, and this is a gravity specific term, the heaviest. And it's going to go to the bottom. So the core of the planet, which again, Peach Pit, is the heaviest or densest part of the planet. And it's mostly and it's the very middle Peach Pit. Watch that movie, The Core, it's hilarious. Very like Alfred Hitchcock, if you know who that is. Water is a good thing. Oh my god, I just made a mess. Okay, it's not a mess, but I am grabbing. I don't know what I just said. So, anyways, so the core is, and this makes sense. Like, why do you tie a weight to your fishing hook? Because you want it to sink to the bottom. And that's exactly what's going on with our planet. The densest or heaviest material back, at that 4.5, 0.8, whatever, billion years ago, when the planet was very fluid, that all sank to the middle. So the core is composed almost exclusively of the most dense or heavy metals that occur naturally, because you got to remember, anything denser than iron is the result of at least a nova, if not a supernova, and is fairly rare in terms of like the planets. So the core is the densest, most common material, which is iron. We all know, what iron feels like if you pick up a railroad tie or something. It's very heavy for its size. So that all sank to the bottom. There are a couple of additional layers above that, and I'll get into why we know this shortly, but and they are referred to as the upper and lower, that's a horrible circle, but go on with your life. The upper and lower mantles. So the planet is divided into 3 compositional and density related sections. The crust, I'll write this down, where are you at? There you go, okay. Crust. Nuts to you. Okay, I'll try to get this. Here we go. It doesn't matter. Crust, mantle, core. Remember those 3 components. Crust, just like a bread crust, it is the outer rim typically a little bit more hard, whatever. Anyways, crust is the outer rim. The mantle is the peach fruit. And the core is the peach pit. With, a little bit of layering in between, which peaches don't have, but the earth does. So anyways, so our upper mantle is typically composed of a mineral called peridot. If you have ever gone jewelry shopping, you may recognize this as peridot, which is a sort of olive green mineral. It's very pretty, right? And it makes up the most of the mantle. In the deeper or lower mantle, the crystal structure has shifted slightly, so it's denser, so it has a higher density rating, as you can see here. So the upper mantle has a density rating of 3.3 grams per cubic centimeter, while the lower mantle is 3.7 grams per cubic centimeter. Incidentally, as you may have noted, 11 is the number for the core. The continental crust runs 2.7, 3.1 for the ocean crust. Let's move onward, shall we? Do with the moving onwards. Don't be a jerk. Come on. There we go. Okay. So, I think that might be too much. Don't be rude. Okay, there we go. So, we have the previous slide was about chemical composition. But we also have differences in the physical properties. And what I mean by that is how it behaves in a physical sense, right? Let's see, what is that? Crystal clear, tiger's blood. Good stuff. All right, so we also have divisions in the way that they behave. And there are sort of, you probably already know this without knowing it, three stages of matter. Gas, liquid, solid. Gas would be the air we breathe, everything that's around us that I'm waving at. Liquid would be, water and other things like that. Solids are solid. There are scientific definitions of these words. I don't think they're really that important in terms of discussing this at a 101 level. If you want to get more into that, by all means, let me know. I will do a video about it. It's fascinating. So we're just looking at how in this layering scheme, like I said, we have chemical layers and then we have physical layers. And it's all about the balance between temperature and pressure. And if we're looking at like a star, like our sun, that balance is such that the pressure is overwhelming. Just based on the mass, right? The sun is so big that it generates so much gravity that the elements in it are smashing together and sticking, right? But we are much smaller. Like, if the sun were an everything bagel, we would be one poppy seed. Not even a sesame seed. One poppy seed against it. So we are dinky in compared to a star. But we are big enough that our gravity variations from core to crust cause matter in general to behave in a different way. And we delineate them as far as 101 is concerned. There are way more divisions, but we're only going to focus on like 3. Other than the core, which is this bad boy right here. And I want to note that the core has, again, watch the movie. It's science fiction mumbo jumbo a la Alfred Hitchcock, but they have a lot of good information. The core has two parts, depending on the pressure, which is a jerk, but also is the winner when it comes to temperature, as we've talked about, I think, before, but will again. Probably not. I've been drinking, remember? That's sort of the point tonight. Also, tonight is a sad night because one of my kitties, his name was Scooter, passed away today. He developed diabetes at the age of 3. And we tried very hard to give him the best. He was a very good Mr. Kitty. He was amazing with other cats. He was so sweet. Anyways, that's why I'm drinking tonight, and decided that the recording would be a good call. So, with cornmeal crust, that is our chemical compositions, but in terms of the way things behave, we have solids, liquids, and gases, but there is a sneaky jerk face between solids and liquids, and we call that plastic. It kind of makes sense. Picture silly putty, but like it just came out of the freezer, right? So it will deform under sufficient pressure, but it is a very slow process. Lava is more like, warm silly putty. It flows a lot more fluidly, but not the way water would. So it's not a Newtonian fluid. There are other terms for it, but plastic is, and you can picture it. Like I like to picture a milk jug, right? That is classic plastic, or a soda pop bottle, right? Coke bottle, classic plastic. You can bend it. You can deform it in a lot of different ways, and it doesn't necessarily break, right? So that's really, really key, right? Plastic bends without breaking. And that's really important. Hopefully that didn't make too much noise. That's really important in telling these two things apart. Lithosphere versus asthenosphere. This only takes place in, really only matters, right, here. The very upper 400-ish kilometers of the planet, which is comparatively to, 3,000-ish. I want to say, don't smack me, geophysicist professor who I will not name, because then you'll really smack me. I can't remember the exact number because ethanol. It's a lovely thing. This thing probably knows, but it's thousands of kilometers from crust to core or middle. I want to say 2,390. Don't quote me on that. I'm good at numbers. Oh, hi, Shadow. One of our babies is Shadow, and she was born to Mama Moochie about 3 years ago. She is the one we kept, and she is a little shite. She's a jerk, and she is adorable, and she is dumber than a box of rocks. I say that as a geologist. Oh, and she has decided to snuggle down in between my feet. Oh, your precious baby. Who's your baby? She is convinced she is baby, and will do the stomping and the nuzzling and the purring and the adorable babiness on several blankets. It's cute. Anyways. Woo! Okay, there we are. Physical properties. Solid, liquid, gas, right? So, The lithosphere and lithos, contrary to what he said during somebody's it's not symposium, what's it called? Seminar. Somebody's seminar professor said lithos does not mean rock. It means strong. Ignore the fact that I can't write that. Strong. Lithos means strong. So the lithos sphere is the circle of strength. And strong things don't bend. They are rigid. They are brittle. And keep that term, brittle, in your head, right? Because, like, picture peanut brittle. And I grew up eating this because family, Southeast, etc. Boiled peanuts, right? Peanut brittle is crunchy, right? It crunches, it breaks, but it sure is pudding does not bend. And that's the key difference. So the lithosphere in the planet of, our planet, probably others, is composed of the parts of the planet that are brittle. They break in response to pressures and stresses as opposed to bending. And that's the key. Brittle things break. Plastic, there it is. Do the other side of the pen. Also known as ductile. D-U-C-T-I-L-E, ductile. Or plastic. And you can picture something plastic or rubbery. It bends, it deforms, but it doesn't oft break, right? Oh, I said it here. Plastic bends. Brittle. That's a good memory tool. Brittle breaks. So both of them start with a B. Brittle things break. Plastic or ductile things, I like that. Ductile deforms, which is just a fancy term for bends. So we have two divisions based on physical properties, and they are confined to the crust and upper mantle. So just the upper part of the peach skin, which, okay, so if we're using peaches as an analogy, the upper part of the peach is the part that could easily have worms in it, right? So that's the lithosphere. And that part is the part that will break in response to pressures or stresses. So it's the crust, which is where we live, plus like 100 kilometers of mantle. It really depends on the location on the planet and how thick the crust is. But as a rule, it's down to 100 kilometers. And that's like fantastic because it's an easy number to remember. 0 to 100 kilometers. That's the lithosphere, and it's brittle. It breaks in response to stress as opposed to bending or deforming. Awesome. Please, please, please comment if you have questions about any of the sciences, because I am a ninja on this department and love to talk about it and or type about it. So, lithosphere, asthenosphere are the two major terms we use when we're talking physical or behavioral properties. Again, lithosphere breaks because it is brittle. And if you don't know what that means, go buy a box of peanut brittle and eat all of it. You'll understand. what brittle means, because it is crunchy and it breaks. Okay, don't eat all of it, but if you want to, by all means. Peanut brittle is amazing, unless you're allergic to peanuts. Then it would be death. So don't do that. Drinking now. Oh. Whew. Delightful. It's the other brand that I really like is On the Rocks for the drinks. But this one's a little less expensive and equally as delicious. And inebriating, as you can probably tell. Anyways, alright. Science. So, I'm going to go back for a second. Maybe. Alright, so, compositionally, we have a crust, which is the outside edge here. We have a mantle, which is the fruit of the peach. And we have a core, which is the pit of the peach. Very good analogy. The crust, there are two different crusts, and we'll talk about that. You already know it, you just don't realize it. Is the upper part is the outside rind of the planet. The mantle is the fruit, and we have two different mantles, and this has to do with how pressure increases the farther down you go. It's another one of those things where, like, you know this, you just don't realize you know it. And so my job is to point out how you know this, right? If you pile up a bunch of rocks on top of something, it's gonna be more squished than if you only pile up like 5 or 6 rocks of equal mass, whatever. The point is, the more crap you have piled on top, the more smushed a thing is gonna be. And there's sort of a critical point for the mineral in question, which is, again, peridot. My second favorite mineral, incidentally. It's a lovely thing. All of it. But when you hit that critical boundary, that is the delineation between upper and lower mantle. And it comes with a very sudden change in density caused by the crystal lattice shifting. We'll get to that. It will make sense eventually. Right? So we have a crust, we have a mantle, we have a core. The crust is the skin of the peach. The mantle is the fruit of the peach, and the core is its pit. But when we talk about the way it behaves, it kind of breaks out a little bit differently because freezing, right? So our lithosphere is the crust, because it's always brittle, plus the upper, 100 kilometers of mantle. So, the shallow mantle. We call all of that the lithosphere. Remember, lithos means strong. So the outer rind is the strong layer. I make serious finger quotes when I say strong. Strong just means it breaks instead of bending. And I used to take a pencil and just snap it in half in class. But that's all. Whatever. You can do that. Take a pencil, break it in half. You hear it crack, right? You feel the sensation of it snapping. That is brittle. Sugar's more delicious. Anyways, so lithosphere, brittle, it's rigid, it's solid, it breaks under pressure. Upper 100 kilometers of mantle plus the crust. Asthenosphere, I don't really have any place to write this that won't look weird. Asthenos, I'm going to just deal with that. There it is. Means weak. So the asthenosphere, which is the rest of the upper mantle, basically down to 410, which is a lovely number, but not as good as 420, am I right? Anyways, so between 100, which is a good easy number to remember, and 410, which at least is a multiple of 5, and once it's that point, I'm happy. Anyways, so 100 to 410. That is called the asthenosphere. Again, asthenos means weak, and weak means it deforms plastically or ductilely. It bends, it doesn't break. Holy crap, we've come to the point, right, of this particular slide, which honestly, you're going to get like 4 slides at the most per episode of this. It's awesome though, because, come back. We also have some transition zones. They're really not important in 101 as a rule, but there's sort of boundaries between the upper and lower mantle, and like we can see them in certain imaging, which I will talk about later. It's kind of nifty. Anyways, again, some more layers. Now we're going to look a little deeper. The lower mantle, again, it really starts at like 660, but you have the 100 to 410, and then there's another layer in between, but it's part of the like middle mantle. So whatever. It's super complicated, and if you really want to understand it, you kind of got to take a 400 level geophysics class, and that's a lot to deal with. I loved my geophysics class. I love geophysics just generally. I think it's brilliant, but it is a lot to deal with, and it is tough if you can't picture it. So, there is a difference between 410 and 660, but as far as we're concerned, in 101, not a thing. So we're just going to talk, go back, lower mantle. So again, okay, so here is the earth round. We have our core. It's actually divided into 2 sections. Again, watch the movie. There is a solid inner core and a liquid outer core. Here it is. That's the thing. And the difference is completely in pressure. The deeper you go, obviously, the higher the pressure. It makes sense, right? The more crap you pile on top of something, the more pressure it's under. The Salem witch trials proved this, and I do not encourage anybody to also improve this, but if you've been swimming, you know this. The deeper you go, the more pressure on your ear holes. Bonus points to anybody who knows where ear holes. No, I was wrong. Ear balls. My ear balls. Bonus points if you know where that came from. Anyways, so under enough pressure, the things that should melt do not do it. So the inner core of the planet, 6371 is the middle of the planet. I was off by about a third. That's rude. I would remember it if I was sober. Cooper duper, I promise. Anyways, so we have 2 cores. I know that makes all kinds of sense. It's just determined by how they behave. The outer core of the planet, again, watch the movie The Core. They talk about this. It's actually central to the plot. The outer core of the planet is a liquid because it is not smushed enough to prevent that. And sometimes you gotta smush it enough to prevent that. The inner core, however, is under enough pressure from everything over it to make it a solid. So it's kind of just a lump, but the outer core does, like this bad boy, does some crazy crap. And we'll get to that. The lower mantle, so here is our 410. We got a little bit down, and that's our 660 layer. Everything below that, in terms of the mantle, is the lower mantle. Shocker, right? So we have the upper, the middle, and the lower mantle, but the upper mantle we refer to as the lithosphere because terminology of common sense, and lithos means strong. It describes how it behaves. So the lithosphere, lithos being strong, means strong layer. The strong layer breaks. Asthenos means weak. The weaker layers, the lower upper mantle, right? And incidentally, everything underneath it behaves plastically. It deforms rather than breaking. So the lower mantle is thick AF. I don't think in most classes you need to memorize this number, but if you're doing flashcards, it's not a bad flashcard, right? So underneath the mantle, we have sort of a boundary between the lower mantle and the outer crust, or the crust in general. We call it the D double prime, and that's D prime prime. It also looks like, if one were to write D quotation mark, but in this context, we refer to it as D double prime. Terminology over common sense. This is a layer between the mantle and the crust that is weird AF. And there's not a lot else that I can use to describe it in a 101 term other than weird AF. If you are in a higher level class and just kind of curious, or, just curious in general, what that means is it is like this weird, okay, backtracking. When a plate gets pushed under another plate, eventually it ends up in the mantle and down around the boundary, the D double prime layer. And what I think, and what every piece of data that my very clever brain can come up with indicates, is that the D double prime layer is a slab graveyard. And what I mean by that is subducted, we'll get to it, it'll make sense, subducted material that isn't incorporated into the mantle ends up in this D double prime layer, or slab graveyard. Don't slap me. Hang on. You with the thing. Shut up. Go back. Don't be a jackaloon. I don't care. Okay. Can you do that? Come on. Oh, that's the one. They change your color. Excellent. Okay. Cute. Brilliant. There's the thing. So what I mean by slab graveyard is all of the stuff that used to be on the surface that has been pushed into the mantle, which we'll get to how that happens, but it hasn't fully melted back in. And so it forms this layer between the mantle and the crust, which are two wildly different things. They do not mix. It forms this sort of boundary layer as it tries desperately to melt itself back into the mantle where it originated 4.5 billion years ago. It doesn't want to mix in, and there are reasons, we call it viscosity, that they will not mix. Lots of reasons. It's like oil and water. If you have an Italian dressing, you shake the crap out of it, right? Everything is well mixed, but eventually it will separate. You'll have an oil layer and a other layer. I dropped the stylus and cats. Hey, Moochie, what are you doing, Looney Tunes? Right, losing your mind. Got it. Poor Moochie. She was born to a feral mom and only was abducted by the evil humans at the age of 1. Well, she was pregnant and, like, literally, she gave birth within 2 days with her first litter. And she is completely bat spit crazy. And it's fantastic. I love watching her because she just, like, bounces off the walls. Okay, going back to, and we're probably going to end with the layering because drunking and sleepy. And also, my mother, who is a saint in her own right, is coming tomorrow to pick up myself and my delightful offspring, and we are going to go to the beach. I live on the West Coast, so that means the Oregon coast, which is my favorite place on this entire planet of Earth. And I will happily accept any donations that would encourage me to go to said beach because I love it. We're going to Lincoln City, which is where my honeymoon took place. And the child and I, Little Bird, are going to spend 4 days with my mother. Again, a saint. No, really. She's a saint. She was an OB nurse most of my life, and then she taught nursing. I don't know anybody who's more patient than my mother, which is a virtue beyond compare. Anyways, okay, so slab graveyard. So the D double prime layer is basically the boundary between the mantle and the core, and in my opinion, educated and quite informed, it represents a slab graveyard. I will fight you over that, and I will throw tartar sauce. It makes sense if you were there. Anyways, so you're being a rude thing, aren't you? Let's go with alright, whatever. Anyways, okay, that's better. So we have 2 boundaries. We have a chemical boundary and a physical boundary or behavioral boundary. Our behavioral or physical boundary is the lithosphere versus asthenosphere. Lithos means strong, asthenos means weak. So the lithosphere is our brittle layer, and brittle means it breaks. Snap, right? Break something. Hear that sound, feel it, right? It makes sense. Lithos is brittle, it breaks. Asthenos, plastic, bends. Remember those 3 terms. Asthenos is the weak layer, which means it is plastic and it will bend in response to pressure or forces. We'll get to that. Not tonight. Anyways. So, again, our lithosphere. Okay, don't be rude. What are you doing? I don't know how this works. Sort of figuring it out as like, okay, don't